The auction block of Kepler Station gleamed under harsh artificial lights, casting an unforgiving glare upon the merchandise. Among the various species and specimens stood Ula. Her Sci-Fi features, distinctly feline ears, and a graceful tail, marking her as exotic even in this interplanetary trading hub. Heavy chains bound her wrists, the metal links rattling softly as she shifted her weight from one foot to another. Her eyes, vertical-pupilled and amber-hued, remained downcast, refusing to meet the hungry gazes of potential buyers. In the third row of the audience, Emerson Hayes watched with a carefully neutral expression. His weathered human face revealed nothing of the calculations happening behind his gray eyes. Once a Marine, now a trader with connections in shadows deeper than most dared to tread. Emerson had not planned to attend an auction today, yet something about the announcement of a purebred Sci-Fi female had drawn him here. Bidding starts at 10,000 credits for this prime specimen, the auctioneer announced, his voice amplified across the chamber. Guaranteed fertility, excellent health, and as you can see, gentle beings. Quite the exotic beauty. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sci-Fi were rare enough in this sector, their homeworld having closed its borders to most interstellar traffic decades ago. A female of breeding age was practically unheard of. 15,000, called a voice from Emerson's right, a Dravian merchant whose tentacles twitched with excitement. 20, countered another bidder. The price climbed rapidly, each new bid causing Ula's shoulders to tense further. Though she maintained her submissive posture, Emerson caught the slight tremor in her tail, fear, or perhaps rage, carefully contained. When the bidding reached 50,000 credits, fewer voices joined the chorus. At 70,000, only 3 bidders remained. The Dravian merchant, a hooded figure Emerson couldn't identify, and a consortium representative whose corporate insignia gleamed on his lapel. 95,000 credits, the consortium man stated confidently, as if placing the final bid. The auctioneer's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. 95,000 from the consortium, going once. Emerson stood. 100,000 credits. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the human who had just outbid the consortium, a rare occurrence in itself. The auctioneer recovered quickly, professional smile never wavering. 100,000 credits from the gentleman in the third row. Going once, going twice. He paused dramatically, scanning the room for any last-minute competitors. The consortium representative merely shrugged, unwilling to engage further. Sold, to the human gentleman for 100,000 credits. Emerson moved toward the transaction booth with measured steps, ignoring the curious glances from other attendees. Within minutes, the credits had been transferred, and he was handed a data pad containing the ownership contract. Guards led Ula from the platform to the handover area, her chains still in place. Up close, Emerson noted details the auction display had obscured, the slight discoloration around her left eye suggesting a recent bruise, carefully concealed with cosmetics, the way she held herself as if protecting her midsection, the stubborn lift of her chin despite her circumstances. The handover official, a bored-looking human woman with station security insignia, pushed the data pad toward Emerson. Thumbprint to finalize, sir. Then she's all yours. Emerson pressed his thumb to the screen, confirming the transfer of ownership. The official nodded, handed him a control fob for Eula's restraints, and turned away, already focusing on the next transaction. Instead of immediately leading his new property away, Emerson reached into his pocket and withdrew an antique lighter, a relic from Earth, with real flame capability, prohibited on most stations, but overlooked due to its status as a collector's item. Ula's eyes widened slightly as Emerson flicked the lighter open, producing a small, dancing flame. This, he said quietly, holding up the contract data pad, is no longer necessary. Before anyone could react, he touched the flame to the corner of the data pad. The fire-resistant materials used in most technology would normally prevent such destruction, But Emerson's lighter burned with a specialized chemical compound designed to overcome such protections. The datapad sizzled, then caught, flames quickly consuming the device. Alarms blared instantly. Security personnel reached for weapons. The handover official shouted for backup. "Run," Emerson said to Ula, tossing her the restraint control. 3 clicks deactivates the chains. For a moment, Ula stared at him in confusion and suspicion. Then understanding dawned in her eyes. Her fingers found the control button, pressed it rapidly 3 times. The chains fell away with a heavy clank against the metal flooring. Emerson was already moving, drawing a concealed weapon from beneath his jacket. He fired twice, not at people, but at the environmental controls on the wall. Lights flickered, emergency systems engaged, and the resulting chaos gave them the opening they needed. "This way," he shouted over the alarms, gesturing toward a service tunnel that would bypass the main concourse. "Unless you'd prefer to stay." Ula hesitated only a fraction of a second before darting after him. Her movements fluid and quick despite her recent captivity. Together, they plunged into the dimly lit service corridor, the sounds of pursuit already echoing behind them. "Why?" she demanded as they ran, her voice accented but her standard clear. "Why would you pay so much just to free me?" Emerson didn't slow his pace. "Questions later. Escape now." The service tunnels formed a labyrinth beneath Kepler Station's public areas, designed for maintenance drones and occasional human intervention. Emerson navigated with the confidence of someone who had studied the layout thoroughly, making turns, seemingly at random but actually following a predetermined route. 3 security officers appeared ahead, weapons drawn. Emerson raised his hands in apparent surrender, but as the officers approached, Ula sprang into action. Her movements were a blur of controlled violence. A sweeping kick took down the first officer, while she twisted to deliver a precise strike to the second's throat. The third managed to fire a shot that went wide before Emerson closed the distance and rendered him unconscious with a practiced blow. "Impressive," Emerson noted as Ula straightened, breathing slightly elevated but otherwise composed. "Military training is required for all Sarathi citizens," she replied tersely. "Even those considered expendable." They continued through the tunnels, the station's security response becoming more organized with each passing minute. Twice more they encountered resistance. Twice more. Their combined combat skills proved sufficient to overcome it. Finally, they reached a maintenance airlock, one of many service exits used for external repairs. "There's a ship docked just outside," Emerson explained, working quickly to override the airlock controls. "Independent operator. Captain owes me several favors. He'll get us off station." "And then what?" Ula asked, her amber eyes scrutinizing him with renewed suspicion. "What do you want from me?" The airlock controls blinked green. Emerson turned to face her fully. "Nothing. You'll be free to go wherever you choose once we're safely away." "Nobody pays 100,000 credits for nothing," she countered. A proximity alarm sounded, security closing in. Emerson gestured to the airlock. "We can debate my motives after we're not being hunted. Your call. Trust me for now. Or take your chances with station security." Ula's tail lashed once in agitation, then stilled. "Fine. Lead on." The airlock cycled open to reveal a short, external passage connecting to a mid-sized vessel with worn but well-maintained hull plating. The name, Wanderer, was painted in faded letters along its side. They crossed quickly, magnetic boots preventing them from drifting in the minimal gravity of the docking area. As they reached the ship's external hatch, weapons fire erupted from the airlock behind them. Emerson pushed Ula toward the entry panel, shielding her with his body as he returned fire. "Access code 7734 Alpha," he shouted over the weapon's discharge. Ula punched in the sequence, and the hatch slid open. They tumbled inside as more shots ricocheted off the hull. The moment they cleared the threshold, the hatch sealed automatically, and internal gravity asserted itself, causing them to land in an ungraceful heap. "Welcome aboard," drawled a voice from the ship's intercom. "I assume from the weapons fire that we're leaving immediately?" "Affirmative, Captain," Emerson replied, helping Ula to her feet. "Preferably before station control locks down all departures." "Already on it. Hang on to something." The deck plates vibrated as the ship's engines engaged. Within moments, they felt the characteristic lurch of emergency undocking procedures, followed by the subtle shift that indicated transition to sublight engines. "Security vessels will pursue," Ula said, bracing herself against a bulkhead as the ship accelerated. "Captain Hayes has outrun consortium patrols in this ship," Emerson assured her. "Station security won't be a problem." The ship's artificial gravity stabilized as they reached cruising velocity. Emerson gestured toward a nearby compartment. "Medical bay, we should check you over." Ula's hand moved protectively to her midsection, a gesture Emerson had noticed earlier, and now understood with sudden clarity. "You're pregnant," he stated, rather than asked. Her eyes flashed defensively. "Yes. Is that a problem?" "No. But it explains why your father was willing to sell you to slavers. A Sarathi-human hybrid would be politically inconvenient for a planetary leader." Ula's expression hardened. "How do you know who my father is?" "Koroth of the Seventh House isn't exactly anonymous in intelligence circles," Emerson replied. "And you have his eyes, despite the Sarathi adaptation." A subtle shudder ran through her at the mention of her father's name. "Then you know he won't stop hunting me. The child I carry represents a dilution of bloodlines he considers sacred. That's why we're not going to any registered port or colony," Emerson assured her. "Captain Hayes is taking us to a place even your father's resources can't reach." Before Ula could respond, the ship's internal communication system chimed. "We're clear of immediate pursuit," announced Captain Hayes. "Setting course for the rendezvous point. Emerson, you might want to come to the bridge. We've got some interesting chatter on the consortium frequencies." Emerson turned to Ula. "Get some rest. Medical supplies are in the cabinet if you need them. I'll be back soon." He found Captain Hayes at the helm, her weathered face illuminated by the glow of control panels. Despite sharing a surname, they weren't related, merely the result of a long-ago administrative error that had amused them both enough to maintain the coincidence. "Bounty's already posted," she informed him without preamble. 150,000 for the Sarathi female, alive and unharmed. Another 50 for the kidnapper. That's you. Dead or alive. Preferably dead. Emerson grimaced. "That was fast." "Gets better. The warrant's issued under consortium authority, but the source is Sarathi diplomatic channels. Seems you've angered someone important." "Her father," Emerson confirmed. "Koroth of the Seventh House." Captain Hayes whistled low. "The isolationist hardliner? The one pushing to revoke all human trading rights in Sarathi space?" "The same. And you just stole his pregnant daughter." She shook her head. "You never do anything halfway, do you?" "She was being sold into slavery," Emerson pointed out. "Her own father arranged it. Because the baby's father is human." Captain Hayes leaned back in her chair, studying him. "This isn't just about a random act of compassion, is it? You know something." Emerson's expression remained carefully neutral. "The child represents a possible diplomatic bridge between our species. Certain elements within both governments would prefer that bridge never materialize. And certain other elements would prefer to see what happens naturally, without interference." Captain Hayes nodded slowly. "Hence the rather dramatic rescue. Well, my ship, my rules, and I've never much cared for slavers or politicians." She checked their course. "We'll reach Kepler's Rest in approximately 48 hours. Should be safe enough for a while." "I appreciate this," Emerson said quietly. "Save it. You pulled my crew out of that consortium prison camp last year. Consider us even." She gestured toward the corridor. "Go talk to your refugee, pregnant, traumatized, and on the run. She's going to need more than a temporary safe haven." Emerson found Ula in the medical bay, examining the equipment with methodical thoroughness. She didn't look up when he entered. "The medical scanner is outdated," she noted, "but functional. Captain Hayes keeps essential systems maintained, even if they're not the latest models." Ula finally turned to face him. "I ran a diagnostic on myself. The child is developing normally, despite recent events." The careful neutrality in her voice couldn't quite mask the underlying trauma. Emerson chose his next words carefully. "Would you like to tell me what happened? It might help me understand what we're facing." For a long moment, Ula was silent, her tail moving in slow, contemplative sweeps. Then she sat on the edge of the examination table, posture straight, but somehow vulnerable. "I was a xenobiological researcher," she began, "assigned to the human diplomatic mission on Sarathi Prime. My father arranged the position, not out of nepotism, but to ensure his daughter could report directly on human activities." Her hand drifted to her abdomen in an unconscious gesture. "I met James at the research symposium. He was brilliant, passionate about cross-species medical applications. We worked together for months before." She shook her head. "It wasn't planned. When I discovered the pregnancy, I told him first. Then my father." "What happened to James?" Emerson asked, though he suspected the answer. "Official records state he died in a laboratory accident." Her voice remained steady, but her claws extended involuntarily, scraping against the metal examination table. "I know better. My father has always valued bloodline purity. A half-human grandchild would undermine everything he's built his political career upon. So he arranged to have you sold off-world, where the child could be born and raised in obscurity. Or terminated." Ula nodded. "The irony is that I might have agreed to terminate the pregnancy had he simply asked. But his actions..." Her eyes flashed with contained fury. "He had James killed, then treated me like property to be disposed of. In doing so, he made this child the only family I have left. And now your father will hunt you both," Emerson concluded, "using every resource at his disposal." "Yes. Which brings me back to my original question. Why involve yourself in this? What stake do you have in my survival or my child's?" Emerson considered his answer carefully. "I was military intelligence before I became a traitor. I saw firsthand how xenophobia and isolationist policies damaged relations between our species. Your child represents something unique, a natural bridge between humans and Sarathi. Some of us believe that bridge is worth protecting." "Some of us?" Ula's ears flattened slightly. "You're working with others." "A loose network of like-minded individuals. Captain Hayes is one. There are others at our destination who share similar views. A resistance movement," Ula concluded. "More of a contingency plan. Official diplomatic channels are increasingly strained. Unofficial ones become necessary." The ship's communication system interrupted with Captain Hayes's voice. "Emerson, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up pursuit. Consortium vessel, heavily armed, moving faster than standard patrol ships." Emerson moved to the intercom. "Special forces. Looks that way. They're gaining..." "How long until we reach the jump point?" 22 hours. They'll intercept before then." Emerson exchanged glances with Ula. "Options?" "I'm changing course," Captain Hayes replied. "There's a mining colony in the Akrux system. Not much more than a way station. But they're independent. Might buy us some time." "Do it," Emerson confirmed. To Ula, he added, "You should rest while you can. The next day might be rough." She regarded him with steady amber eyes. "I've survived worse." The Akrux mining colony proved to be little more than a collection of prefabricated structures anchored to a resource-depleted asteroid. What it lacked in amenities, however, it made up for in discretion. The colony administrator, a grizzled veteran of the border wars, asked no questions beyond whether they could pay for refueling and supplies. They had 6 hours before the Wanderer would be ready to depart. Emerson used the time to secure additional weapons and medical supplies, while Captain Hayes worked her communications network, seeking information on their pursuers. "It's not good," she informed them when they reconvened in the colony's single drinking establishment, a dingy room serving synthetic alcohol to off-duty miners. "My contact confirms it's a direct commission from Sarathi Diplomatic Forces. They've hired a human mercenary team to avoid interspecies jurisdiction issues." "Clever," Emerson muttered. "Humans capturing humans doesn't trigger diplomatic incidents." "There's more," Captain Hayes continued. "They're using genetic trace technology, some new innovation that can track specific DNA signatures across vast distances." Ula's tail stiffened. "Impossible. Such technology would violate at least 3 interspecies treaties." "Treaties don't mean much in unclaimed space," Captain Hayes pointed out. "And this team seems well equipped. They tracked our course deviation within hours." "How long before they reach Acrux?" Emerson asked. 12 hours, maybe less. The Wanderer will be ready in 6. Emerson calculated. "We'll have a head start." "To where?" Ula interjected. "If they can track my genetic signature, no destination is safe?" A tense silence fell over the table. Finally, Captain Hayes spoke. "There might be a way. Kepler's Rest, our original destination, has unusual electromagnetic properties, natural radiation patterns that interfere with most scanning technologies. It's why we use it as a haven." "Would it block genetic tracking?" Ula asked. "Unknown," Captain Hayes admitted. "But it's our best option. And if we can reach Dr. Voss, he might have solutions we haven't considered." "Dr. Voss?" Ula's ears pricked forward with interest. "Xenobiology specialist," Emerson explained. "Former consortium researcher who disagreed with their methods. He's been working with hybrid species for decades." Hope flickered briefly in Ula's eyes, quickly replaced by caution. "And he's at this Kepler's Rest?" "Established a research facility there years ago. Off the grid, independent funding." "We should go," Ula decided. "Even if the tracking technology still functions. At least this Dr. Voss might help with the child's development. Sarathi human pregnancies are largely theoretical in medical literature." Their plans were interrupted by the colony's emergency alarms. Lights flashed red throughout the facility, and the administrator's voice echoed through speakers. "Unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity. All personnel to security stations. This is not a drill." Captain Hayes was already on her feet. "They're early." "Go prep the Wanderer," Emerson instructed her. "We'll be right behind you." As the captain hurried away, Emerson turned to Ula. "Stay close. If we're separated, head directly for Docking Bay 3. They moved through the suddenly chaotic colony, emergency personnel rushing past them toward defensive positions. The mining facility wasn't built for warfare, but like most frontier outposts, it maintained basic defenses against pirates and claim jumpers. They had nearly reached the main corridor leading to the docking bays when an explosion rocked the station. Emergency bulkheads slammed down automatically, sealing off sections to prevent catastrophic decompression. "They're not even attempting negotiation," Emerson realized, steadying Ula as the deck vibrated beneath them. "This is a direct assault." "My father's influence," Ula replied grimly. "He would have authorized lethal force." A secondary explosion, closer this time, sent them staggering against the wall. Warning lights indicated atmospheric compromise in adjacent sections. "Alternative route," Emerson decided, pulling Ula toward a maintenance access panel. The service tunnels should still connect to the docking area. The narrow maintenance tunnels were designed for repair drones rather than humanoids. They crawled through cramped spaces, guided by Emerson's portable navigation device. Behind them, the sounds of weapons fire and shouted commands grew louder. "They've breached the central hub," Emerson noted. "We need to move faster." As they emerged from the maintenance tunnel into a cargo processing area, they encountered their first mercenaries. 3 armored figures methodically scanning each container with handheld devices. "Genetic tracker," Ula whispered. identifying the equipment. "They're following my signature." One of the devices emitted a shrill alert. The mercenary holding it turned directly toward their position. "Target located," he announced into his comm unit. "Cargo Bay 7, Section C." Emerson didn't hesitate. He fired twice, taking down the mercenary with the tracking device. The other two scattered, seeking cover behind cargo containers. "Run for the docking bay," Emerson ordered Ula. "I'll hold them here." "No," she countered, drawing the weapon he'd provided earlier. "We go together or not at all." Before he could argue, she moved with startling speed, using the Sarathi's natural agility to leap atop a cargo container. From this elevated position, she fired with precision, forcing one mercenary to retreat. The second managed to trigger an alarm before Emerson's shot rendered him unconscious. "More will come," Ula warned, jumping down beside him. They raced toward the docking bay, alarm klaxons now blaring throughout the station. Twice, they encountered station personnel, confused and frightened by the sudden attack. Emerson briefly explained the situation, urging them to reach escape pods. The Wanderer's engines were already cycling up when they reached Docking Bay 3. Captain Hayes stood at the open hatch, covering their approach with a heavy assault rifle. "About time," she called as they sprinted up the boarding ramp. "We've got company incoming, full tactical team, heavily armed." The moment they were aboard, she slammed the hatch control and rushed toward the bridge. "Strap in! This departure won't be smooth." They had barely secured themselves in the acceleration couches when the Wanderer lurched violently, emergency thrusters firing to break docking clamps without proper release procedures. Metal screamed as connections tore away, and warning systems throughout the ship protested the dangerous maneuver. "Damage report?" Emerson called toward the bridge. "External docking mechanism compromised," Captain Hayes replied, her voice tight with concentration. "Hull integrity at 92%. We'll hold." The view screen showed the mining colony receding rapidly as the Wanderer accelerated away. But pursuit was already visible, a sleek, military-grade vessel detaching from the station's opposite side. "They're scrambling interceptors," Captain Hayes announced. "Ballistic weapons. They want to disable, not destroy." "Can we outrun them?" Ula asked. "Not conventionally." Captain Hayes's hands flew across the control panels. "But I didn't survive the border wars by playing fair." The engine pitch changed, rising to a concerning whine. "What are you doing?" Emerson demanded, recognizing the sound of drive systems being pushed beyond safety parameters. "Burning out the secondary propulsion module to give us a boost," Captain Hayes explained. "It'll fry the system, but we'll gain enough distance to make the jump before they can range on us." The ship shuddered violently as overtaxed systems pushed it to speeds its design never intended. Behind them, the pursuing vessel fired warning shots, bright streaks of energy that dissipated harmlessly in their wake. "Jump calculations complete," Captain Hayes announced. "Brace for transition in 3, 2, 1. Reality distorted around them as the Wanderer entered hyperspace. The familiar disorientation of jump transition washed over them, heightened by the ship's excessive speed. When normal perception returned, the view screen showed only the swirling patterns of hyperspace. "We made it," Captain Hayes confirmed, slumping slightly in her chair. "Course set for Kepler's rest. Estimated arrival in 17 hours, assuming the drive holds together." "The secondary propulsion system?" Emerson asked. "Completely fried, as expected. We're running on primary systems only now. No redundancy." Ula released her restraints and stood carefully, one hand steadying herself against the bulkhead. "Will they be able to track us through hyperspace?" "Conventional tracking, no," Captain Hayes replied. "This genetic technology of theirs? Unknown. But Kepler's rest remains our best option." In the hours that followed, they took turns monitoring ship systems and watching for pursuit. The Wanderer's damaged propulsion reduced their speed, extending their journey by several hours. Ula used the time to study the medical database, focusing on interspecies pregnancy information. There's very little research on Cerathy human reproduction, she noted, when Emerson joined her in the medical bay. Most of it theoretical. Deliberate suppression, Emerson suggested. Both governments have reasons to discourage interspecies relationships. James collected data, Ula continued, her voice softening at the memory. He believed the combination could produce unique attributes, enhanced empathic abilities. Primarily, she placed a protective hand over her abdomen. He would have been a wonderful father. We'll reach Dr. Voss soon, Emerson assured her. He's the foremost expert on interspecies medicine outside official channels. Ula studied him with those perceptive amber eyes. You've planned for this situation. Not me specifically, perhaps, but something like it. As I said, contingencies. Emerson acknowledged. Relations between our species have been deteriorating for years. Many of us saw this coming. A network of dissidents, Ula mused. Humans and Cerathy working together against isolationist policies. We prefer pragmatists. A small alarm from the medical scanner interrupted their conversation. Ula glanced at the readings, her expression shifting to concern. The baby's development is accelerating, she noted. Heart rate increasing, neural activity spiking. Emerson moved to examine the scanner. Is that normal for Cerathy pregnancies? No. Our gestation period is similar to humans, approximately 9 months. But these readings... She manipulated the controls, bringing up comparison charts. Development markers suggest 3rd trimester activity. I'm barely into my 2nd. Before Emerson could respond, Captain Hayes's voice came over the intercom. We've got a problem. The hyperspace drive is showing instability. We need to drop to normal space for recalibration. The ship shuddered as it transitioned out of hyperspace. Stars reappeared on the view screens, along with a small, unremarkable planet. Where are we? Emerson asked, making his way to the bridge with Ula following closely. Uncharted system, Captain Hayes replied, focusing on the drive diagnostics. About 6 hours from Kepler's rest at sublight speeds. Status of the drive? Power fluctuations in the primary coil. I can stabilize it, but we'll need to remain in normal space for at least an hour. Ula studied the planetary body visible on the screen. Is that planet inhabited? No records in our database, Captain Hayes answered. Atmospheric readings suggest it's habitable, but there's no evidence of civilization or colonization. A new alarm sounded. Proximity alert. Captain Hayes swore under her breath as she checked the sensors. Transition signature detected. A ship just dropped out of hyperspace less than 1 million kilometers away. The mercenaries? Emerson asked, though he already knew the answer. Configuration matches. That genetic tracking must work in hyperspace after all. Ula's hand tightened on the back of the captain's chair. Options? Captain Hayes assessed their situation with military precision. We can't outrun them with damaged drives. Can't outfight them with our armaments. That leaves hiding. She nodded toward the planet. The atmosphere should mask our signature if we can reach the surface before they detect us. Do it, Emerson agreed. The Wanderer angled toward the nameless planet, accelerating as rapidly as its compromised systems allowed. Behind them, the mercenary vessel adjusted course to match. They've spotted us, Captain Hayes announced. Weapon systems activating. The first shot came as a warning, a high-energy pulse that detonated several kilometers off their port side. Next one won't miss, Captain Hayes muttered, pushing the engines harder. They plunged into the planet's atmosphere. The ship's hull, heating rapidly as friction built around them. Warning systems blared as structural integrity was tested beyond recommended limits. The pursuing vessel fired again, this time a direct hit to their aft section. Systems flickered throughout the ship as power surged and stabilized. Drive control compromised, Captain Hayes reported, fighting the manual controls. Navigation systems failing. Brace for rough landing. The Wanderer careened through cloud layers, spinning partially out of control despite the captain's best efforts. Terrain features became visible below, vast desert plains interrupted by rock formations and scattered vegetation. "Impact in 20 seconds, Captain Hayes warned. "Emergency protocols engaged." The ship hit hard, skidding across sand and rock in a shower of debris, and displaced Earth. Internal stabilizers failed completely in the final moments, throwing all three of them against restraints as the vessel finally ground to a halt. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of ruptured conduits and the ping of cooling metal. Emergency lighting cast a reddish glow throughout the bridge. "Status?" Emerson managed, testing his limbs for injury. "Alive," Captain Hayes responded, already checking critical systems. "Ship's another matter. Drive core is offline. Life support functioning on backups. Communications. Limited range only." "Ula?" Emerson turned to find her still strapped in her seat, eyes closed, breathing labored. "I'm functional," she replied, opening her eyes with visible effort. "But something's wrong. The impact must have accelerated the pregnancy somehow." As if confirming her assessment, she gasped suddenly, doubling over as much as her restraints allowed. "Contractions," she managed through clenched teeth. "Early labor." "We need to get her to the medical bay," Emerson said, releasing his restraints and moving to help her. Captain Hayes's attention remained split between the damaged controls and external sensors. "We've got more immediate problems. The mercenary ship is still in orbit. They're launching landing craft." "How many?" Emerson asked, supporting Ula as she struggled to stand. "At least 2 shuttles. Estimate 20 personnel, heavily armed." "How long until they reach us?" 30 minutes, maybe less." Emerson made a rapid calculation. "Get as many systems back online as you can. Focus on communications. If we can reach Kepler's Rest, Dr. Voss might send help." He gestured toward Ula. "I'll get her to medical and see what we can do about the labor." Captain Hayes nodded grimly. "I'll buy you as much time as possible." The medical bay had survived relatively intact, though supplies were scattered across the floor from the impact. Emerson helped Ula onto the examination table, then activated the diagnostic scanner. "The contractions are irregular but strengthening," Ula observed, her clinical researcher's mind seemingly detached from her body's distress. "Accelerated development suggests the hybrid nature is affecting normal gestation patterns." Emerson reviewed the medical readings. "Vital signs stable for both you and the child. But we're not equipped for delivery, especially not a potentially complicated interspecies birth." Another contraction seized her, stronger than before. When it passed, Ula met his gaze with determination. "We may not have a choice. This child is coming, whether we're ready or not." Emerson accessed the ship's medical database, searching for emergency obstetrics protocols. His military training had included basic field medicine, but nothing specific to childbirth, much less interspecies delivery. "Captain," he called over the comm system, "what's our status?" "Short-range communications restored," she replied. "I've sent an encrypted distress signal to Kepler's Rest. No response yet. The mercenaries will reach our position in approximately 20 minutes. "Understood. Keep working on defenses." Turning back to Ula, he found her breathing rhythmically through another contraction. "They're coming faster now," she noted. 5 minutes apart. "Active labor," Emerson confirmed, based on the information he'd pulled from the database. "We need to prepare for delivery." He gathered what medical supplies remained intact: sterilization field generators, basic surgical tools, monitoring equipment. The Wanderer's medical bay wasn't designed for childbirth, but it contained enough emergency equipment to manage. Ula watched his methodical preparations with a mix of pain and resolve on her features. "You've done this before." "Never," he admitted. "But I've performed emergency surgery under fire. The principles are similar. Stay calm, follow procedure, adapt as necessary." She nodded, then tensed as another contraction gripped her. "They're stronger, closer together." The ship's communication system activated. "Emerson!" Captain Hayes called, urgency in her voice. "We've got response from Kepler's Rest. Dr. Voss is sending an extraction team. ETA 40 minutes. "The mercenaries will be here in less than 20, Emerson reminded her. "I know. I'm setting up defensive perimeters now, but we'll need to hold them off for at least 20 minutes after contact." "Understood." To Ula, he added, "Help is coming. We just need to buy some time." Her amber eyes reflected both pain and determination. "Then we'd better get this child delivered quickly. I'm not much use in combat at the moment, but afterward." Another contraction interrupted her, more intense than previous ones. The medical scanner beeped an alert, cervical dilation progressing rapidly, heart rates elevated in both mother and child. "This is happening faster than normal human or Sarathi labor," Emerson noted, helping Ula into a more comfortable position. "The hybrid nature may be accelerating the process." Captain Hayes's voice came over the comm again. "Perimeter defenses set. I've rigged what weapons we have left at key approach points, but we're outnumbered and outgunned." "Hold as long as you can," Emerson instructed. Ula's sudden cry cut him off. The medical scanner showed dramatic spikes in vital signs. "The baby's coming," she gasped. "Now!" What followed was a blur of intense focus amid chaos. Outside, the first sounds of combat erupted as mercenaries encountered Captain Hayes's defensive perimeter. Inside the medical bay, Emerson worked with steady hands despite the distant weapons fire, guiding Ula through the final stages of an unnaturally rapid labor. "One more push," he encouraged as the ship shuddered from a nearby explosion. Ula bore down with a final, determined effort. Moments later, a new sound filled the medical bay, the unmistakable cry of a newborn, surprisingly strong and clear. "A girl," Emerson announced, quickly wrapping the infant in sterile medical cloth. "She appears healthy." But as he moved to place the child in Ula's arms, something extraordinary happened. The infant's cries ceased abruptly, replaced by a soft, pulsing glow that emanated from her skin. Simultaneously, a wave of something washed through the medical bay. Not physical, not quite emotional, but a presence that touched mind and body alike. "Quantum empathic field," Ula whispered in awe, reaching for her daughter. James theorized, but to see it manifested. The infant settled against her mother's chest, the glow dimming slightly but still visible. The strange field continued to pulse outward, expanding beyond the medical bay. Over the communication system, Captain Hayes's voice came through, filled with confusion. "Emerson, something's happening. The mercenaries, they've stopped fighting. They're just standing there." Before Emerson could respond, the medical bay door slid open. He spun, weapon raised, to find himself facing a tall, imposing Sarathi male in formal diplomatic attire, Korath of the Seventh House. Behind him stood several mercenaries, weapons lowered, expressions oddly vacant. "Father," Ula acknowledged, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Korath took a single step forward, then stopped, seemingly held in place by an invisible force. His eyes, so similar to Ula's, fixed on the infant in her arms. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice lacking its usual authority. "This sensation—" "Your granddaughter," Ula replied simply. "The child you tried to erase from existence." Korath struggled visibly, as if fighting against the influence radiating from the newborn. "A genetic aberration, a political liability. You know why it had to be contained." "She," Ula corrected firmly. "Not it. She is a person, my daughter, and apparently, she has abilities neither of our species anticipated." The mercenaries behind Korath remained motionless, caught in the same strange influence. One by one, their weapons clattered to the floor, released from suddenly nerveless fingers. Emerson maintained his defensive position between Ula and the intruders. But he, too, felt the effects of the infant's presence, a profound sense of calm, overlaid with fierce protectiveness. The empathic field, he realized aloud. It's affecting everyone within range. Impossible, Korath insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. No documented ability. Because you and others like you ensured no such children were ever born, Ula countered. Or if they were, they didn't survive to demonstrate their gifts. The ship's communication system activated again. Emerson, Captain Hayes called. Extraction team from Kepler's Rest has arrived. Dr. Voss is with them. Moments later, a tall, slender human with silver-streaked hair appeared in the doorway behind Korath. Despite the tense standoff, he smiled broadly at the sight of the newborn. Remarkable, he commented, seemingly unaffected by the weapons and hostility. A quantum empathic field, just as theory predicted. The first documented case. He glanced at the immobilized mercenaries with scientific interest. And quite effective. I see. Dr. Voss. Emerson greeted him without lowering his weapon. The situation is complicated. So I observe. The doctor moved past Korath, with casual disregard for potential danger, approaching Ula and the infant. May I? Ula hesitated, then nodded, allowing him to examine the child while maintaining her protective hold. Perfect health, Dr. Voss announced after a brief assessment. Advanced neural development, consistent with accelerated gestation, and the empathic field. He gestured to the mercenaries, still frozen in indecision. Speaks for itself. Korath finally found his voice again. This changes nothing. The child represents a diplomatic incident that cannot be allowed to escalate. The Sarathi Conclave will never accept. The Conclave doesn't need to know, Ula interrupted. Not yet. Not until she's old enough to demonstrate that such fears are groundless. And what of the mercenaries? Emerson asked practically. The bounty? The genetic tracking technology? Dr. Voss smiled enigmatically. The extraction team has disabled the tracking devices on the mercenary shuttles. As for the mercenaries themselves, he glanced at the still immobilized figures. I believe your daughter has already resolved that situation, at least temporarily. The infant chose that moment to make a small sound, not quite a cry, but a soft coo. The empathic field pulsed stronger in response, and Korath visibly staggered. What is she doing to us? He demanded. Nothing harmful, Dr. Voss assured him. Merely adjusting emotional responses, reducing aggression, enhancing empathy. Quite remarkable for one so newly born. Emerson watched as one of the mercenaries slowly sat down on the deck, weapon forgotten, a look of profound confusion on his face. Others followed suit, some removing helmets to reveal expressions ranging from bewilderment to unexpected calm. They can't fight, he realized. Not while under her influence. Precisely, Dr. Voss confirmed. Which gives us an opportunity to resolve this situation without further bloodshed. He turned to Korath. Your diplomatic position is secure. Your daughter and granddaughter will remain at Kepler's Rest, outside official channels. No embarrassment to your government. No compromise to your political stance. And if I refuse this arrangement? Korath challenged, though his usual authoritative tone remained muted under the infant's influence. Ula met her father's gaze steadily. Then we expose everything. Your arrangement with the slavers, James's murder, the illegal genetic tracking technology. How would the Conclave react to learning their respected leader violated multiple interspecies treaties? A tense silence fell, broken only by the soft sounds of the newborn. Finally, Korath gave a single, sharp nod. Very well, but understand this. If word of the child's existence reaches Sarathi Prime, I will deny all knowledge, and if her abilities prove dangerous, they won't, Ula stated with quiet confidence. She'll be raised to understand her gift and use it responsibly. Dr. Voss clapped his hands together once, the sound startlingly loud in the tense atmosphere. Excellent! Now, I suggest we transfer mother and child to our medical facility at Kepler's Rest. The Wanderer has served admirably, but I think we all could use more comfortable surroundings. The evacuation proceeded with surprising smoothness. The mercenaries, still under the influence of the infant's empathic field, offered no resistance. Some even assisted with transferring equipment and supplies to the extraction vessels. Korath maintained a stony silence throughout, watching the proceedings with unreadable eyes. As they prepared to board the lead extraction ship, Ula paused before her father. The newborn in her arms continued to emit a soft glow, though the intensity had diminished as she settled into sleep. "She needs a name," Ula said softly. Korath's expression flickered with something almost like regret. "Choose wisely. Names carry power." Ula studied her daughter's peaceful face. "Hope," she decided. "Her name is Hope." For the briefest moment, something softened in Korath's stern features. Then the diplomatic mask returned, and he stepped back without another word. The journey to Kepler's Rest passed without incident. Dr. Voss's facility proved to be a marvel of independent scientific achievement, a complex built into the natural caverns of the planet, shielded from detection by the unusual electromagnetic properties of the surrounding rock formations. "We've been operating here for nearly a decade," he explained as he showed them around. "Researchers, refugees, those who believe in bridging the divide between species rather than enforcing separation." "A sanctuary," Emerson observed. "Of sorts. We prefer to think of it as a laboratory for the future, a place where possibilities can be explored without political interference." The complex housed several dozen individuals, humans, Sarathi, and members of other species, all working together in apparent harmony. There were living quarters, research facilities, hydroponic gardens, and a surprisingly well-equipped medical center where Ula and Hope were immediately installed for observation and recovery. "The empathic field has stabilized," Dr. Voss noted, after examining the infant the following day. "Still present, but no longer overwhelming to those around her. Fascinating adaptation." "Will it remain?" Ula asked. "Or is this temporary?" "Unknown. We've never had the opportunity to study such abilities before, but I suspect it will evolve as she grows, becoming more controlled, more directed." Captain Hayes, having overseen the recovery of essential equipment from the Wanderer, joined them in the medical center. "The mercenaries have departed," she reported. "Korath's shuttle left orbit an hour ago. No sign of pursuit or surveillance." "And the genetic tracking technology?" Emerson inquired. "Neutralized, according to our technical team. They've installed countermeasures throughout the complex, just in case." Ula gazed down at her sleeping daughter. "What happens now?" Dr. Voss smiled gently. "That's entirely up to you. You're welcome to stay here as long as you wish. Hope's development will provide invaluable research data, of course. But more importantly, you'll both be safe." "And free," Emerson added. The word seemed to resonate with Ula. "Free," she repeated softly. "Something I never truly was on Sarathi Prime, even before." She shook her head. "James would have loved this place. The research, the cooperation between species, everything he believed in." "His legacy lives on," Dr. Voss assured her, nodding toward Hope. In the days that followed, Ula gradually integrated into the Kepler's Rest community. Her xenobiology expertise proved valuable to ongoing research projects, while her first-hand knowledge of Sarathi political structures helped refine the sanctuary's security protocols. Emerson remained longer than he had initially planned, drawn by both professional interest in the sanctuary's operations and a growing personal connection to Ula and her daughter. His intelligence background and tactical experience complemented the sanctuary's existing security measures, creating a more robust defense system. 1 month after their arrival, he found Ula in the observatory dome, a transparent structure atop the highest point of the complex, offering an unobstructed view of Kepler's Rest's spectacular auroras. Hope slept peacefully in a carrier at her side, the faint glow of her empathic field visible even in slumber. Dr. Voss says her abilities are developing along predicted lines, Ula noted as Emerson joined her. Already she can focus the field on specific individuals rather than projecting it generally. Remarkable progress for one so young, Emerson agreed, though perhaps not surprising, given her parentage. Ula turned to face him fully. You never told me your real mission. Why you were at that auction on Kepler Station? The truth. Emerson. He considered his response carefully. Intelligence suggested Koroth was arranging the sale of his daughter to eliminate a political embarrassment. Several factions had interest in the situation. Some wanted to use you as leverage against Sarathi Prime. Others saw an opportunity to worsen diplomatic relations by exposing the scandal. And you? What faction did you represent? One that believes war between our species would be catastrophic for both sides. One that seeks alternatives to official diplomatic channels, which have grown increasingly dysfunctional. He gestured toward Hope. One that sees her not as a political liability, but as the beginning of something new. Ula absorbed this in thoughtful silence. Finally, she asked, Will you be leaving soon, returning to your network? Eventually, he acknowledged. There's still work to be done, but not immediately. Good. Her hand found his, a gesture of trust that meant more than words could express. Hope needs protectors who understand what she represents, what she could become. A bridge between worlds, Emerson suggested. More than that, Ula corrected softly. A new world entirely. Below them, the lights of the sanctuary complex glowed against the darkening landscape. Humans, Sarathi, and other species working together toward a shared vision. Beyond their protected valley, the wider galaxy continued its familiar patterns of alliance and conflict, commerce and exploitation, progress and regression. But here, in this hidden place, something unprecedented had begun. A child born of two worlds, gifted with abilities that could fundamentally alter how sentient beings interacted. A living embodiment of what might be possible if fear and isolation gave way to cooperation and understanding. Hope stirred in her sleep, the empathic field pulsing gently around her. In response, both Ula and Emerson felt a wave of contentment and possibility. Emotions not entirely their own, yet somehow perfectly aligned with their deepest aspirations. Dawn soon, Ula observed as the first hint of light appeared on the distant horizon. A new day. A new beginning, Emerson agreed, his hands still entwined with hers as they watched the darkness gradually recede, giving way to the promise of morning.